Good evening. What I am about to tell you is not a legend I was told as a child, nor a tale I read in an old book. It is something that happened to me, and it changed me forever. Perhaps, after hearing it, you too will begin to see your own sorrows in a different way. It all began a couple of years ago. I was one of those people who pride themselves on their pragmatism. I didn't believe in ghosts or curses, or anything that couldn't be explained by logic. My life was orderly, predictable, until one Tuesday afternoon. While looking for a birthday gift for my sister, I walked into an antique shop on a street I could have sworn I had never seen before. The place was a typical cliché. It smelled of dust, old wood, and time standing still. The air was thick, and an asthmatic little bell announced my arrival. Behind a counter cluttered with brass and porcelain objects, an old man with small, kind eyes looked up. He introduced himself as Elías. I spent almost an hour in there, fascinated by the objects and their possible histories. I found a small silver locket that was perfect for my sister and went to pay. As Elías wrapped it with exquisite care, he looked at me intently and said, "I see you appreciate things with soul. Would you like to see something truly unique? My personal collection." My curiosity got the better of my hurry. I nodded. He led me through a threadbare velvet curtain to a small back room that served as a study. The room was dominated by an enormous darkwood cabinet with hundreds of small glass doors, and inside each one, on a black velvet pedestal, was a tiny glass vial. Each vial was different. Some were long, others round, others in whimsical shapes, and each contained a single, glistening drop of transparent liquid. "What is this?" I asked, moving closer. "It is my collection," Elías replied with a gentle smile. "The collection of tears." I thought it was a poetic eccentricity, a kind of art project. I noticed that each vial had a minuscule label written in elegant calligraphy. I leaned in to read some of them. Tale of a mother, saying goodbye to her son at the port, 1912. Tale of a musician whose violin broke before a concert, 1954. Tale of a child who lost his dog, 1987. There were hundreds. Tears of joy, of fear, of rage, but above all, of a deep and pure sadness. "It's fascinating," I said, not knowing what else to say. "How?" "Ah," he interrupted, and his tone shifted. The kindness was still there, but now it had a different, sharper edge. "You see, a tear is not just salt and water. When the emotion that causes it is strong enough, a tear becomes a vessel. It traps an echo, a fragment of the soul that shed it." He approached the cabinet and, with a surgeon's fingers, took out a vial. The label read, "Tear of a man who lost everything in a fire, 1933. He held it up to my ear. "Listen," he whispered. At first, I heard nothing, but as I concentrated, in the silence of that room, I perceived it, an incredibly faint sound, like the crackling of a distant ember and a broken murmur, a lament so full of despair that I felt an icy chill run down my spine. I pulled back abruptly. "What the hell is that?" "It is him," Elías said, his face illuminated by a strange passion. "It is the echo of his pain. I care for them. I listen to them. I keep them from being lonely in their sorrow." It was then that I saw it. Behind the kindness in his eyes, there was a voracious hunger. He wasn't a caretaker. He was a jailer. Each of those vials was a glass prison for a moment of eternal agony. He looked at me again, but this time his gaze pierced through me, as if he were reading the most hidden pages of my life. He saw a grief that I had been bearing for years, a loss I had never fully mourned. "You have one too," he said in a low voice. "A powerful tear, held back for too long. I can see it, shimmering behind your eyes. I can help you release it. I can give it a place of honor in my collection. You will feel relieved." He extended his hand, and in his palm was an empty vial, the most beautiful of all, made of crystal carved with silver filigree. And on the small parchment label, with the ink still fresh, was my name. I felt a terrible pressure in my chest, and my eyes, against my will, began to burn. The voices from the other vials seemed to intensify, a chorus of sad whispers that called to me, that invited me to join them. The promise of letting go of all that weight, of no longer feeling that dull ache that accompanied me every day, was almost unbearable. I just had to let one tear fall. A single one. But in that moment of weakness, I understood freeing myself from that grief wouldn't be a relief. It would be a surrender. It would be handing a piece of my soul over to this man to display on his shelf. My pain, my loss, it was mine. It was a part of me. With a strength I didn't know I had, I shook my head. No, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. My sorrow belongs to me. Elias's smile vanished. He didn't seem angry, but disappointed. He put the empty vial back in his pocket. As you wish, he said, but sorrow always looks for a way out. I will be waiting. I didn't need to hear any more. I turned, went through the velvet curtain, and left the shop almost at a run, without looking back. The little bell sounded like a mocking laugh at my back. Since that night, my life has not been the same. I'm not so pragmatic anymore. I now know that there are things in the world far stranger and more terrible than logic can explain. And above all, I'm now afraid to cry. Because every time I feel a tear about to fall, I wonder if on some forgotten street, an old man named Elías is waiting with an empty glass vial, ready to add a new echo to his collection.